الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ومولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله علي وعلى آلك المظلومين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفناء. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات. Continuing our discussion on the lifetime of our fourth Imam, Al-Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. In general, we can say that the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim community, at the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, was facing many challenges, many difficult challenges, and at different fronts, at different levels. One level is the intellectual challenge, the cultural challenge. Another is the moral challenge, moral issues that were spread in the community, political issues, social issues, economical issues, maybe as well. Different types of challenges that this Imam, or the time at that time that the Muslim Ummah faced at the time of this Imam. I'll, inshallah, talk now about the first two that I mentioned: the intellectual challenge, the cultural challenge, and the moral challenge. What do I mean by all these? You know, whenever there is an exposure, so I'll talk about the cultural challenge now, the intellectual challenge. What is this cultural, intellectual challenge that the Muslim Ummah is facing or was facing at that time? Whenever there is an expansion, whenever there is an exposure of a certain community or a certain society to other societies and other communities, naturally there is a certain level of influence. There's a certain level of influence. Communities and societies, when they open up to each other, when they're exposed to each other, they're not living in isolation anymore. There will be a certain level of influence. And when a community does not have enough immunity, when the Muslim society, let's say, does not have the good immunity to be able to identify and filter out what is bad from the other cultures, let's say, then there will be a big problem. There will be a massive problem then. This is what I mean by the intellectual change, the cultural change that the Muslim community was facing at that time. When you don't have this exposure to other cultures planned, architected, managed, then many problems will emerge. Because when you talk about a society, when you talk about a different community, when you talk about different cultures, different civilizations, these are a result of a certain set of values, a certain set of beliefs. That next culture, that next civilization that we're opening up to, that we're exposing ourselves to, and that they are exposing also themselves to us. Do we know what this civilization is based on? Do they believe in God? Do they have similar values that like we have? Do they have similar principles? Similar moral qualities that we have? Or is it not? Some societies, for example, if you tell them hijab, they don't understand what this is. This is why you hear in some, maybe ignorant, from some ignorant people, they would tell you, for example, hijab, yeah, this is, the women are being suppressed by the men. That's all they see. That's all they understand. That's their level of understanding. They don't understand the philosophy behind it. They don't maybe care to understand what it is really about. Why is it an obligation? The concept of iffah and chastity, to some communities, it doesn't exist. They don't understand it, at least like we understand it. Iffah, a great moral quality, a great value. But some civilizations, some cultures, they don't understand what this is. So, an example here that one can mention is maybe simple. Some people might look at it as simple, and it is fashion. What cultures wear, what communities wear. The way you wear, usually, it speaks volumes about what you believe. The way you dress up in a community, the way you dress up in the public space, it manifests what you believe, manifests the values that you believe. This is where when we say, for example, the ladies observing hijab, it manifests this value that I just mentioned. That is what? Chastity, iffah. That men were also, when they also behave around ladies in the public space, that's iffah, that's chastity. Some communities, they don't get it. I'm a man, why should I be considerate? I want to live like I want to live, you know? The way you wear. Some civilizations, if they want to enslave others, if they want to change the identity of other civilizations, see what they influence. They influence the type of food they eat. See, for example, different franchises in this world of what? Globalization, capitalism. They influence what they wear, the fashion. Do we think when we import certain fashion from other cultures, other civilizations, do we try to compare these with our values? Do we try to think that, oh, is that compatible with our moral system? Is that compatible with what we believe? Or is it just, it looks nice, it looks colorful, let's just wear it? I'm not saying to enclose ourselves. I'm not saying that we need to isolate ourselves. In fact, you know, the evolution of the way a community wears and, you know, the way they clothe themselves, it evolves with time. It's a historical thing. It's a fact. Even Ahlul Bayt actually acknowledge it. There is a narration attributed to Imam Sadiq, alayhi salam, that he said, خَيْرُ لِبَاسِ الزَّمَانِ لِبَاسُ أَهْلِهِ. The best clothing of a generation is that of its people. It is narrated that this Imam, alayhi salam, he was asked, why are you wearing in a way that shows some affluence, that shows you're well off? Your grandfather, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he wouldn't wear as such. Imam Sadiq answered. He said, that was his time. If I wear like him now, that would be inappropriate. They acknowledge that every generation has their own way of what? Displaying, showing, for example, their clothing, wearing. Yes, so this is acknowledged. But also, we do not have to be what? Or we have to not be inconsiderate about it. Because these little things change our perception, change our culture. We think we're importing just fashion, but we're actually importing the moral qualities on which this fashion is founded. This is why it is important that we actually compare, that we study, that we analyze. Is this Islamic or is it not? Not Islamic, take it aside. Other cultures can keep them, they're compatible with their values, but they are incompatible with ours. This is one area, one example. Really to say that when two cultures, when two civilizations expose each other to each other, there will be influence. There will be a certain level of influence. Of course, we believe that the Islamic culture, the Islamic education, the Islamic intellectual education, it is superior. We really believe that if someone educates herself or himself on the values of Islam, embodies and practices the values of Islam, we really believe that this individual, wherever you put her, wherever you put him, wherever she or he goes, they will be able to preserve their culture. They would be able to preserve their Muslim identity. Taqwa. Isn't this what taqwa teaches us? Taqwa, meaning piety, meaning you establish a certain connection with God in such a way that you don't need anyone else to police you. You don't need anyone external to tell you, don't do this or do that. No, no, no. It is a shield within yourself. You know what is right, what is wrong. You don't need anyone to tell you. Your God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is within you, is in your heart. This is what taqwa teaches us. These are what the principles of Islam teach us. The issue is, my brothers and sisters, is that these teachings of Islam, since the inception, since the beginning, they were not allowed to spread. The Islamic civilization, in its true Muslim values, the purity that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, was not allowed to spread, at least not easily. Since the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca, he faced so much hardship, so much resistance. In Medina, so many wars waged. Imam Ali alayhi salam, before he took Khilafah, he was isolated. He was excluded, essentially. He was excluded from the public arena. Some others were favored. Someone who was a Jewish convert would be placed in the mosque of Rasulullah and narrating to people some narrations and hadith. Ka'b al-Ahbar. You might have heard of that. Ka'b al-Ahbar. Much of the calamities that we have in our historical reports and narrations and books of hadith, many of the calamities which are called Isra'iliyat, traditions that are non-Islamic, they infiltrated into our books. Why? Because at that time, Ali bin Abi Talib was supposed to sit at home, but in the mosque of the Messenger of God, we qualify that person. This is what happens. A calamity that the Muslim Ummah is facing till this date. A decision was made. A decision that was made. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, we know the calamities that he faced. Imam Hussain alayhi salam, we know the calamities that he faced. All our Imams. With all these, while the community, so now we're talking about a Muslim community whereby the Islamic values were not really spread in the way that they were intended to be. On top of that, you have now what? Exposure to external cultures. Of course, I'm not denying that external cultures have positivities. Non-Muslim cultures, they have great positive things that we can learn from, obviously. What I'm talking about here is that when you have a Muslim community that is not immune enough, that is not educated enough, that is not spiritual enough to be able to face other challenges, yes, there will be big problems in the Muslim community. Yes, you will have problems like the spread of the idea of predetermination, that God is forcing us to do what we do. That when we sin, it is the will of God. That when Yazid kills Hussein, it is the will of God. That when Muawiyah acquires Khilafah in the way he did, it's the will of God. And if you object, you're objecting to the will of God. Yes, you will have these kind of thoughts. They would infiltrate in the Muslim community. Plus other thoughts, many other thoughts. Inshallah, tomorrow I'll talk in detail about what really happened to the Muslim Ummah then. In terms of beliefs, what are the beliefs that the Banu Umayyah were trying to spread in the community? This community of no intellectual immunity, of no cultural immunity. Someone who does not have strong immunity in health, you wouldn't go and tell them, go anywhere you want, expose yourself without any precaution. No sane person says that or does that. Someone has a lack of immunity, health is not that great, that strong, you would have to observe caution. And of course, when you're exposed to something, an external factor, you will be harmed. You will be harmed. Multiply that by a community, by a Muslim world. See and understand what the types of challenges that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam was facing and what dangers the Muslim Ummah were facing at that time. So this is one area, that the intellectual challenge, the cultural challenge, the cultural dangers that the Muslim Ummah were facing or was facing were due to exposure to new cultures without planning. Expansion without planning. You're expanding the Muslim world, fine, but what happens after? Do you know? Do you know what this kind of people who are joining Islam, what values they're bringing? Are you making any calculations there? What kind of Islam are you exporting to them? Is it the Islam of slavery, like we discussed last night? Is it the Islam of racism, like also we discussed last night? Is that what Islam, is that the Islam that you're exporting to others? And what are you importing? Needs planning. Well, apparently those people in authority, they were not caring about this. All they saw was the market value. Market value. Another factor which harmed the intellectual level of the community, of the Muslim community at that time of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, was due to what? The deception and the misinformation of the authorities, by the authorities. What do I mean? In modern days, we call this brainwashing. Brainwashing. Essentially, you want to brainwash someone, you isolate them from reality. You make sure you censor everything. You don't let any correct information reach that person. Brainwashing. Muawiyah worked hard on this. Muawiyah and the people around Muawiyah, they worked very well on this. They were actually building a culture. They were building a system of values, essentially a religion for those people, brainwashing them. I'll mention some examples. Some historians say that the people of Sham, the center of the government of Muawiyah and later Yazid, the Umayyad rule, the people of Sham did not know of a family of the Prophet other than whom? Other than Abu Sufyan and Muawiyah and Yazid bin Muawiyah, these people. When someone says the family of the Prophet, it's these. They didn't know other family. Ali, Fatima, who are these people? Some reports say that Muawiyah, he gave some pieces of advice to Yazid before he left. He gave him one piece of advice related to the people of Iraq, one piece of advice related to the people of Medina, and another related to the people of Sham. People of Sham, around Yazid. Muawiyah would say to Yazid, his son, انظر أهل الشام فليكونوا بطانتك ورعيتك. The people of Sham, people of Syria, they are your support and your subjects. If something suspicious happens to you from your enemy, if the enemy intend bad towards you, there is a war essentially, then rely on them. These are your people. Rely on them. And once you defeat your enemy, return the people of Sham to their countries immediately. For if they stay in a country other than their own, they will change. For example, if they go to war with the people of Kufa, the people of Iraq, those who lived with Ali, those who knew Ali, who he was, those who knew the family of Ali, they mix with them for too long. They're not the isolated people anymore that we want them to be. We can't then continue brainwashing them. Did we not hear this story that someone would look at Ali? In some narration, some report, he just saw Ali, looked at him. Is this Ali? In Sham, we didn't know that this is Ali. This man flipped. This man flipped just because he saw Ali. Some people are living in misinformation, in brainwashing. Yes, the people of Sham believed that Ali was kafir. Yes, they did think so. With conviction, Ali was kafir. Nowadays, people inside the so-called state of Israel, inside, they truly believe that what? The Israeli army is the most moral army in the world. They do believe it. That's brainwashing. That's brainwashing. Isolate people from the reality. Tell them what you want. Teach them what you want. This is what happens. Imagine an ummah, a Muslim ummah, at the time of Yazid, time of Muawiyah, time of those people. This was their project of those rulers, those leaders in the name of the Prophet. This was their mission. So these were some of the issues that the ummah was facing during the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Another challenge is the moral challenge. Imagine now you have a community, you have an ummah, you have a nation, At the top of the pyramid is someone like Yazid, son of Muawiyah, a drunkard man. At the top of the pyramid is someone like Marwan, those later people who came and governed. Imagine, this is the ummah. Those who are standing and presenting themselves as taking the position of the messenger of God, the messenger of mercy, the one who said, "Ma innama bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq." I've only been sent to complete what? The noble traits of character, morality. At the top of the pyramid is someone like Yazid bin Muawiyah. Yazid Muawiyah was reported to be what? A drunkard. Someone who was fond of playing with monkeys in office. He had a monkey by the name of Abu Qais, it is said. And it was dear to him. And Yazid would drink and offer the rest of the drink to this monkey, Abu Qais. And he would say that Abu Qais, he was an old man from the Bani Israel, and he transformed into a monkey because of his sins. And he would, so this is the Khalifa, this is Amirul Mu'mineen, they call him, the chief of the believers. He would have this monkey, Abu Qais, riding a donkey and participating in races. And he would cheer for him. And once in a race, this Abu Qais fell down and died. And Yazid was devastated. And he ordered that he would be shrouded and that there would be a funeral over this monkey, Abu Qais. And he commanded the people of Sham to come and pay condolences to him. That's Yazid, at the top of the pyramid. This is the representative of the community of the Muslims at that time. You have a father of the house, something like that. What do you expect from the house? You have a father in a house, for example, who does not wake up for Fajr, who doesn't care about Salat. What do you expect then from the children? You have, for example, a mother who is also not caring about Salah, not reciting Quran in the house. Why do you expect then that your children should care about reciting Quran? If you as parents think it's fine to watch something that is inappropriate on TV, what do you expect then from your children? Multiply that by a Muslim ummah. A Muslim ummah. This was the status. There was a moral collapse in the Muslim ummah. A moral collapse. Hussain was killed. Can you understand that? And by whom was he killed? By people who lost their moral compass. People who lost their values. Do you need more moral degradation than this level? Than people finding it okay? Or at least that people would not feel that they should do something about it? That Hussain, the grandson of the Prophet, the only living son of a daughter of a messenger of God, that was the moral degradation level that this ummah reached. Now the Imam alayhi salam had roles, of course. The role of the Imam now is to what? To try to change. Is to change, is to reform this status. When you want to reform, my brothers, my sisters, there's usually two ways. One of them, the second of them, or both together. One is that you go and you change the situation or the status quo superficially. A government, a country that is corrupt. Okay, you go, you change the president, and you bring a pure, nice, good president. But the system remains corrupt. The system is not only a president, a prime minister, representatives of people in certain councils. No. There's the civil servants, there's the police, there's people, there's a community, there's a society. Some might want to change it from what? The superficial level. I'll mention examples. Muawiyah bin Yazid. There's Muawiyah, the one we know. Yazid, his son. That Yazid had a son called Muawiyah, the second Muawiyah. This Muawiyah, he didn't rule for long. They say 40 days. This Muawiyah stood on the minbar and he said, my father was wrong. Muawiyah, my grandfather, was wrong. The Khilafah belongs to Ali ibn al-Hussain. Imam Zain al-Abidin is the righteous ruler, the righteous Khalifa. He said it on the minbar. He announced it. Imagine that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam took the rule now. Would he be able to change? our sixth Imam, Al-Imam Al-Sadiq, alayhi salam, some years later, it is said that Abu Salam al-Khallal, it was at the time of what? The revolution of the Abbasids to take over from the Umayyads. It was around that time. Abu Salam al-Khallal, he was one of these figures. He came to Imam al-Sadiq and he said, "Oh Imam, we offer you, you should lead us. You should rule us." Imam Sadiq refused. The Abbasids came, they changed the top of the pyramid from the Umayyad community, the Umayyad society, the Umayyad governorship, and they brought new ones. What did that change? And as historians say, that the Abbasids, they did worse to Islam than the Umayyads. Yeah, of course, there was, they opened the libraries in Baghdad, there was a translation movement, right? Yes. There was the golden age of Islam, as if Islam is about science advancements, as if Prophet Muhammad brought what? Told us that we need to be not servants of God, not moral people, not behave or be humans by the essence of humanity. No. We need to be people of science, people of exposure to other cultures. Of course we should. We need to be. That's a blessing from God. But that's not the priority. It's not the priority. Go and read what the Abbasids did. At least the way of rule, it was still a kingdom. It was still a kingdom. And see what they did to people like Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So changing at the superficial level, it just doesn't work. If it worked for some time, it doesn't last. This is where Imam Sajjad alayhi salam decided and had the vision that he needs to change the infrastructure of that community. He needs to change the foundations. He needs to reform the foundations of the community. Intellectual foundations. Intellectual foundation. For example, Imam alayhi salam in the Masjid al-Nabi in Medina, he had circles. He would teach Quran, Hadith, Tafsir. He would have circles. He would try to spread this knowledge, fiqh. Also, it is reported that a greater percentage of the Qurra are the generation of people, those people who are experts in Quran, experts in Hadith. The greater percentage of them were the students of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Sa'id bin Musayyab says that the Qurra would not leave Mecca as long as Ali ibn al-Hussain Zain al-Abidin is in Mecca. And he said, when he leaves, they would leave. And they would be 1,000 people. That's the influence of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Intellectual level. When you influence the public, when you influence the people, then you would be having the hope of a transformation in a community. Another example is Imam Zain al-Abidin. We mentioned this at some point in Sham, when he was in Sham, when he was taken captive from Karbala. A man from Sham, he came to him. Obviously, they didn't know who these were. This man said to Imam, he started cursing him. He said, "Praise be to God and thank God that he exposed you people and he killed you people." And the Imam would converse with him and he would say, "Oh man, did you not read the Quran?" The man said, "Yes." "Did you not read?" The Imam answered, "Did you not read إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى?" The man said, "Yes." Imam said, "نَحْنُ الْقُرْبَى." We are the relatives of the Prophet. "Did you not read this verse of the Quran?" The man says, "Yes." The Imam says, "It is us." "Did you read that verse of the Quran?" The man says, "Yes." Imam would say, "It is us." In the end, that man also would flip. He would say to the Imam, "Oh Imam, forgive me. Does God accept my repentance?" The Imam would say, "Yes, obviously." And Yazid, the news reached Yazid and he ordered that man to be killed. Imam alayhi salam, his intellectual revolution, it appeared in different places. This is an attempt that the Imam alayhi salam was doing. That's at the intellectual level, changing the foundations, reforming the foundations. Another way is the moral reformation. The moral reformation. When we read du'as from the Imam Zain al-Abidin, du'a makarim al-akhlaq, for example, the du'a of the noble traits of morality, that du'a, a treasure. A treasure. Not only was it an opportunity for transforming that community of that generation, it is an opportunity for every generation till the day of judgment to be reformed morally. That dua, we recite it. Inshallah, in the month of Ramadan, for example, we recite this dua, very beautiful dua. A phrase, a quote from it. وَلَا تَرْفَعْنِي فِي النَّاسِ دَرَجَةً إِلَّا حَطَطْتَنِي عِنْدَ نَفْسِي مِثْلَهَا. Oh God, do not raise me in the eyes of people. Oh God, do not raise me a single degree before the people without lowering me. It's like in myself. When you give me a certain fame, oh God, when you give me a certain social status, when you give me a good reputation in the eyes of people, don't let me fall in that trap. Let me always feel about myself as the humble person, the insignificant person before you. Reminding people their relationship with God, reminding people to show this humility. وَلَا تُحْدِثْ لِي عِزًّا ظَاهِرًا. Oh God, and bring about no outward exaltation for me without an inward abasement in myself to the same measure. Disciplining the people. This is the revolution of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Another example was that it is narrated in some reports that the governor of Medina, Hisham bin Ismail, at the time of the Imam Zain al-Abidin, he was one of the harshest people on the Imam and his family. Very harsh on him. And at some point, the decision of sacking that person came. And the new governor exposed that old governor in front of the people. And he said to all the people, whoever has any right over this governor, come and take it now. And that governor, Hisham bin Ismail, was terrified from whom? From Zain al-Abidin. From the amount of oppression and harshness he treated him with. And the Imam would come and tell him, fear nothing. If you need some money, if you need something, come to us. Akhlaq. Another example is the du'as that we have, Dua Abu Hamza Thumali. Dua Abu Hamza, the one that's reported also from Imam Zain al-Abidin, starting with what? Ilahi, la tu'addibni bi'uqubatik. Oh God, do not discipline me with your punishment. ولا تمكر بي في حيلتك. من أين لي الخير يا ربي ولا يوجد إلا من عندك. Oh God, where do I get any goodness? And all goodness is from you. ومن أين لي النجاة? And how can I get salvation? And salvation is not possible except with you. A long dua with deep meanings, breaking your heart before God. That's a revolution, moral revolution. Another example is the Sahifa Sajadiyya, all the Sahifa that we have, the munajats that we have, wallahi, treasures of the school of the followers or the followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt, treasures. The treaties of rights, at a time where rights were probably at the bottom of the list of interests of any authority then. The right of the mother over her son, the father over his son, the right of the child over his parents, the right of the governor over the subjects, the right of the subjects over the governors, the right of the slave over his supervisor, the right of the supervisor over his slave or servant. Slave. Who was talking about rights of slaves? Yazid bin Muawiyah, when he demanded from the people of Medina allegiance, he said, I am taking allegiance from you as subjects, as slaves that can be sold and bought. You are paying allegiance to me, not as followers of a leader. No. I'm demanding the allegiance from you that you admit that you are slaves to me. What right? What right? Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam is revolutionizing morality in that community. We turn our hearts to the tragedy. It is narrated on the authority of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that he said that Imam Zain al-Abidin cried over his father Ali ibn al-Hussain. Some reports say for 20 years, some say for 40 years. And no food was placed in front of him except that he cried over Imam al-Hussain at it. Until one day a servant of his told him, "O Imam, may I be your ransom, O son of the messenger of God? I fear for you that you will be among the dead because of how much you cry." Imam answered, "Innama ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah." He quoted Yaqub. What he said as he was grieving over the loss of his son Yusuf, "I only complain of my sorrow and grief to God, and I know from God what you do not know." Imam continued, he said, I have never mentioned the death of the sons of Fatima except that I became choked with tears. Tragedy. In another report, one of his servants said to the Imam, he said, O son of the Messenger of God, is it not time for your grief to end? It's been so long now, years and years. Imam said to him, woe to you, the Prophet Yaqub, Jacob, had 12 sons, and God took one of them away from him, so his eyes turned white from the intensity of his crying over him. And his hair turned grey from grief, and his back became hunched from sorrow. And his son was alive in the world. His son was alive in this world. But I looked at my father, and I looked at my brother, and I looked at my uncle, and 17 of my family members all slaughtered around me. So how can my grief end? In Al-Manaqib, it was said that the Imam cried until people would be worried for the health of his eyes. Whenever he took a cup of water to drink, he cried until his tears would fill it. So some people asked Imam Zain al-Abidin about that, and he said, how can I not cry? My father was prohibited from drinking water, which was available to the wild beasts and the wild animals. The horrific scene did not escape the mind and the heart of the Imam alayhi salam. The scene in which he saw the tents of the ladies of the family of Rasulullah being burnt, and that man from the enemy shouting and screaming, أحرقوا خيام الظالمين, burn, أحرقوا بيوت الظالمين, burn the houses, the tents of the oppressors, meaning the family of the Prophet. Imam would not forget the daughters of Rasulullah fleeing from one tent to another, and the fire chasing them, and the screams of the orphans rising, while some of them would cling to their auntie Zainab so that she may protect them from the fire. And some of them would be wandering aimlessly in the desert, some of these little orphans. It was narrated that Abu Hamza Thumali entered upon Imam Zain al-Abidin one day and found him sad and gloomy. And he said to him, Yabna Rasulillah, O son of the Messenger of God, is it not time for your sadness to end and your crying to decrease? My master, aren't you all familiar with death? O Imam, did you not say, Inna al-qatla lana aada wa karamatuna min Allah al-shahada? O Imam, did you not say that you can't threaten us with death because we're familiar with death? Did you not say that martyrdom, being killed on the way of God, is an honor from God to us? O Imam, why are you crying this much? Wasn't your grandfather Ali bin Abi Talib killed by the sword of Ibn Muljam? Wasn't your uncle Hassan also killed? Why are you crying this much over Hussein? Imam Zain al-Abidin turned to him and said, may God reward your efforts, O Abu Hamza. Did your eyes see or your ears hear that a woman from the family of the Prophet and Ali was taken captive before the day of Ashura? Is it normal that our men are killed? Is it normal that our women be taken captive? Is it normal that our tents be burnt? By God, Abu Hamza, I never looked at my aunts and sisters without remembering their flight on the day of Ashura from one tent to another and from one shelter to another, when the man from the enemy cried out, burn the houses of the oppressors, while they sought refuge with one another and cried out, O my grandfather, O Rasulullah. That's what they would cry on that day. Yeah, the greatest calamity over the heart of our Imam, the most painful calamity for his soul, was their entry to Sham. It is said that when he was asked about the most severe and most devastating calamity, the Imam answered, Sham, Sham, Sham. When Zainab and the ladies were paraded in front of the people of Sham, they're receiving the curses of the people of Sham. Sometimes the Imam Zain al-Abidin, it is narrated that he would go out to the market, and if he saw a butcher who wanted to slaughter a sheep or so, he would approach him and say, "Did you give it water to drink?" The man would say, "Yes, O son of the Messenger of God, we do not slaughter an animal until we give it a little water to drink." And the Imam would cry and say, "Alas for you, O Abu Abdullah, a sheep is not slaughtered until it is given water to drink, but you were slaughtered thirsty by the river Euphrates." It was narrated that Imam Zain al-Abidin entered one day and saw a stranger. So he greeted him and invited him to his house to be his guest. He said to him in the presence of a group of people, the Imam said, "Do you think that if death befell you while you were a stranger to your family, would you find someone to wash you and bury you?" The people said, "O son of the Messenger of God, we all perform this duty." And the Imam cried and said, "Abu Abdullah was killed as a stranger, but he remained for 3 days being melted by the sun without being washed or shrouded." Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. Ilahi, we ask you برأس الحسين بصدر الحسين بعين العباس بصبر زينب بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها فرج عنا يا الله 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 استجب لنا دعاءنا يا الله. O God, answer our prayers and grant us our hajat. For the acceptance of your hajat, insha'Allah. For the shifa of all the marda. Inshallah, may Allah grant the need to everyone who is in need in this community, everyone attending this majlis and their relatives. To the souls of the mu'mineen and mu'minat of your relatives, to the souls of the shuhada, to the souls of the ulama. For the preservance of our ulama, for the victory of the oppressed over oppressors all around the world, especially the oppressed brothers and sisters in Palestine and everyone supporting them. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha, preceded by salawat.